Adjunct accounting professor at Montclair State University, Dan Geltrude. Good morning, Dan. Okay, so let's get straight into this. So these attacks by the Houthi rebels on cargo ships in the Red Sea began on October 19th and haven't let up since. So Dan, how are these attacks affecting businesses, and how is it all connected to the rising prices of goods right here at home?
Well, what it does here is it creates shortages of supplies. And that means things are going to get more expensive. So what's happening is you have these drone and missile attacks. And even if they're not damaging ships, what happens is that alternate routes have to be found for safety purposes. That takes more time and more money, if it's even possible. And then you have ships that simply won't go into the Red Sea, and they have issues with their insurance carriers as well. So this is going to have global impact simply because goods cannot get to the people.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily even think about. Okay, so this is sad news. It's the end of an era in San Francisco after 86 years. Jeffrey's Toys, an inspiration for the Toy Story franchise, announces it will be closing next month. Now that, of course, no surprise due to crime in the Golden City. I mean, Dan, this is one more store just falling victim to the nation's growing crime wave. I mean, what can businesses do to survive at this point?
Sadly, there's not a lot that businesses can actually do. Listen, when law enforcement can't protect the citizens, what happens? Chaos. So these stores, it's not just a matter of whether they're going to get robbed. Consumers aren't going to go into those areas. So they're simply forced out of business. So they're really left with no other alternative than to close or find alternative locations. It's really a shame, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's policy-driven, bad policy-driven. We have to allow law enforcement to protect people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, In-N-Out just closed their very first store ever in Oakland. It's not looking good right now out in California. Well, it's a rough time for renters. A new Harvard study finding that half the renters in the United States, 22.4 million people, are cost burdened, spending at least 30% of their income on rent. That's an all-time high. And on top of that, the median asking rent price is a whopping 22% higher now than it was back in 2019. Dan, what is going on here?
Well, this is a case of simple supply and demand. What we're seeing in the housing market is very little inventory. So the cost of houses are skyrocketing. So what do people do? They look into the rental market. And what you're seeing now is, again, because of supply and demand, more people wanting apartments, the prices are going up. So this is literally, in my opinion, driven by the cost of housing.
A trickle-down effect. Not a good thing there. Dan Geltrude, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.